Coming up in today's newscast, Israel gets blamed again for airstrikes in northern Syria. New information comes to light from the recently revealed Iranian nuclear archives, and the first episode of Sacha Baron Cohen's new Showtime series comes out, and it looks like no one is safe. Late last night, a Syrian military base in Aleppo was pummeled by a round of airstrikes. Israel is widely believed to be behind the attack, though as per policy, the army has offered no comment on the matter. Anywhere from 9 to 22 pro-Syrian regime fighters have been reported killed in the blast, and the base is also heavily linked with Iranian proxy forces, which may explain the site's significance as a target to the IDF. If Israel is indeed behind these airstrikes, it would be a somewhat significant departure from past strategies. Israeli jets have been reported in attacks in southern and central Syria, but rarely does the IAF venture as far north into enemy territory as Aleppo. Still, this is the same base that Israel is believed to have struck back in April, and it comes at a crucial moment in the ever-shifting tides of Middle East policy. Last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss Israel's security concerns in Syria. And today, United States President Donald Trump will also meet with Putin at the Russia-United States Summit in Helsinki. Netanyahu has likely lobbied Trump hard to stress Israel's interest with the Russian president. American officials, however, speculate that Trump may choose to avoid the touchy topic of Syria altogether during his meeting with Putin. If that's the case, then a supposed Israeli airstrike in Aleppo like this would definitely send a message to Russia that Israel is prepared to look out for itself. This meeting also comes days after Special Counsel Robert Mueller's indictment of 12 Russian nationals from the GRU Russian Federation Intelligence Agency. The Russian nationals are charged with hacking the DNC servers during the 2016 presidential election in order to sway the election in favor of Trump. For now, it remains to be seen, though, whether Trump or Putin will address the elephant in the room during their talks, or how this will affect Middle East policy in the weeks to come. The IDF has just sent a very clear message to Hamas that the country is prepared for war if need be. Additional Iron Dome batteries have just been deployed to Tel Aviv as well as regions of southern Israel, and the army has also summoned reservists from the Air Defense Corps to man the effort. Though this is all precautionary, the mere gesture is a demonstration of Israel's readiness for war in any situation.
אין דבר כזה מבחינתנו הפסקת אש שמחריגה את עפיפוני האש והבלוני האש. אין דבר כזה. מבחינתנו זה לא קיים. ולכן אנחנו בעיצומו של מהלך. אני אגיד את זה בפעם השביעית, והדבר הזה אני מקווה יחדור, אבל אם הוא לא יובן על ידי המילים שלי, הוא יובן על ידי המעשים של צה"ל.
This defense boost follows perhaps the most turbulent weekend between Israel and Palestinians in Gaza since the 2014 war, Operation Protective Edge. Over the weekend, terrorists hurled some 174 rockets into Israeli territory. An Israeli family of 4 in the city of Sderot was injured by shrapnel when a rocket struck their home without warning. Israeli jets retaliated in full force, striking at least 40 known Hamas targets within the Strip. 2 Palestinian teenagers are said to have been killed in the airstrikes. After 48 hours of escalations that threatened to erupt into war, Egypt reportedly entered the equation to broker an emergency ceasefire. A day later, that deal still does appear to be holding, but the issue of Palestinians flying firebombs over the border using homemade kites threatens to undo the temporary silence. Israeli leaders and army officials are split over whether or not to use lethal force to deter these arson attacks. On one hand, the incendiary kites are a dangerous breach of a ceasefire truce. On the other hand, more Palestinian casualties may fuel the flames of war. For now, Israelis near the borders are just trying to resume their daily lives and hoping for things to get back to normal. Speaking of war, Hala Golden, the mother of Hala Golden, whose body was taken captive during the 2014 Gaza war, Operation Protective Edge, is again accusing the government of dragging its feet in returning her son. Hamas has held both the bodies of Hala Golden and Oren Shaul, as well as Israeli citizens Avraham Mengistu and Hisham al-Sayed, for years, actually. And Hala Golden is now saying that everyone who promised they'd do everything for us has betrayed us. Golden now calls on the government to close borders and completely withhold all humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip until the 4 boys are returned. And here with more is expert on the Middle East from the Begin Sadat Center at Bar-Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kedar, thank you so much for returning to the studio with us. So my first question is, Hala Golden is arguing that returning her son simply isn't a priority for the government. What's your response to that?
Well, I believe that she doesn't really know about all the discussions which are being held behind the scenes between the Israeli government and its representatives and all kinds of parties all over the world, especially the Germans, who try to mediate between Israel and Hamas. I'm not sure that the government reports in every issue to the family, and could be that this is what the government should do, to report them about everything which is being done. However, what is good now, compared to what happened with Gilad Shalit a few years ago, is on that time, the family actually recruited the whole Israeli media and the public sphere in order to succumb to all the demands of Hamas. And therefore, Hamas raised the price to more than 1,000 killers in the price of Gilad Shalit. This was then. Today, the family does not ask the government to release killers. The family asks the government to maintain or to operate leverage
and to
on
increase
Gaza.
Pressure on Gaza.
Means to stop all kinds of things which Israel sends into the strip. This is much more effective because, of course, you could release all the prisoners, all the killers, and they will release the 4 people, the 2 dead and the 2 alive. Yet, what will happen later? Because today, what we see is that those who were released in the Shalit swap actually are leading the actions against Israel, and for years already. This family, the Golden family, do not demand to release killers. They demand to maintain pressure on Hamas in order to release the boys, and this is much more clever, much more wise to do this in order to release the 4 people.
So why do you think this isn't necessarily being done? Because we know that, you know, the ceasefire after this latest weekend round of violence is holding currently, and the border is now open for humanitarian aid. I mean, they don't seem to be at least taking Hala Golden's suggestions.
Well, the problem is that the government is governed by the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court usually does not allow the government to maintain too much pressure on Gaza Strip. So we give them food, we give them water, we give them fuel, we give them medications and everything which is needed. And this is the problem between being humanitarian, being humane, and give the people what they need and maintain pressure. But don't forget, the people in Gaza, almost 2 million people, are occupied by Hamas. They are occupied. Look, I have friends in Gaza. They call me time and again, come and occupy the strip again. Because when Israel was there in the Gaza Strip, the attitude to the people was much better than what it is under Hamas. And they always give me the same example. When Israel needed to check a lady, the Israelis always brought a lady, a soldier, or a policeman. Never a man, a male, checked a woman in Gaza, even if she was considered to be carrying some explosive something. Hamas are behaving totally different, and they know the difference. And they humiliate the girls and humiliate the women, and I spare you the description, what they do. But what happens there today is things which aggravate the population way much more than being under the Israelis.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see if the government actually takes any of this advice from Hala Golden to heart and puts this pressure on Hamas as you say they need to. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
With the clock ticking to pass new legislation concerning ultra-Orthodox enlistment in the IDF, the state is now seeking an extension on their deadline. Last year, the High Court struck down the existing law which exempted Haredi men from conscription into the army. The courts gave Netanyahu's government until September to pass a new law, but with the issue continuing to divide the coalition, reaching a consensus is obviously much easier said than done. As of now, there is a draft for a new bill on the table, but speculation is split over whether or not all sides will be able to successfully pass it into law. The current version, which is uniformly opposed by ultra-Orthodox members of the Knesset, requires only a small percentage of yeshiva students from Haredi communities to draft into the IDF annually. If those quotas are not met, then the yeshivas themselves are punished in the form of economic sanctions. Many see this quota system as a fair compromise to the overall issue, but for ultra-Orthodox parties, which make up a commanding cornerstone of Netanyahu's current coalition, the idea of even one member drafting into the IDF is intolerable. This religious community believes that all their members should be exempt from army service because it distracts them from religious studies. Critics, however, have long argued that every Israeli citizen is required to protect their country, either in the army or through social service. So why should Haredim be any different? Regardless, the state is clearly less than confident that a compromise can be reached in time anyway. So the government has applied for a 7-month extension for the current draft law in order to buy time to pass a new one. But if the courts say no, and if no compromise can then be reached, then as of September, 100% of all Haredim will be legally required to draft. Ultraorthodox members have already threatened to leave the coalition if they don't get their way, so if it comes down to it, Israel is likely going to see what happens when an immovable object is met with an unstoppable force. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Netanyahu stunned the world by revealing possibly the greatest Mossad heist in Israeli history on primetime television. As you may recall, this was an entire archive of Iran's nuclear efforts taken from Tehran, which documented the regime's efforts to develop a nuclear warhead in the early 2000s. The reveal was followed by United States President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw the U.S. from the JCPOA-Iran nuclear deal, and now American journalists have just gotten their first look at what's inside these files. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with the details.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks. So yeah, this is really the first time that Israeli officials have granted reporters the power to see sections of those sealed documents within these files. And obviously they couldn't be shown everything due to security reasons. But staff in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal got a pretty good look at what's in there. And they all agree that these documents show just how organized and thorough Iran's program was back in 2003 and suggest that those nuclear aspirations are definitely still alive and well today.
Right. So as I understand, then, the materials do kind of support Israel's suspicion that even under the JCPOA, Iran is still 100% working towards making a bomb, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think pretty much everyone agrees that this is for sure what Iran wants bottom line. You know, the current terms of the Iran deal are designed to slow down that process for another decade or so. But the fact that Iran's current president is listed as a member of the Council for Advanced Technologies, which is their nuclear program that tried to develop the bomb, probably that means he's still got that goal very much on his mind. And other evidence in the files also suggests that Iran for sure had foreign help putting this program together. You know, there's a scientist from Pakistan and some Chinese intelligence that's apparently implied in these files.
All right, now let's be clear about something. Everyone does seem to agree that this archive confirms Iran's nuclear program was very much alive in the 80s and the 90s, right, but was shut down in 2003. And then it was moved to a warehouse, right, where people are split. However, you know, they're split over whether or not this means Iran is violating the terms of the nuclear deal today, which requires Iran to halt any actions that would result in a bomb.
Right. So again, I'd say these new details kind of give, you know, both sides of that coin the kind of evidence that they would want, you know, because on one hand, the full extent of the program and the fact that the archive still exists today, it wasn't destroyed, is ostensibly seen as a violation of the current deal, for sure. On the other hand, if there was no deal, then this intelligence proves that Iran could very well have had a nuke in a pretty short amount of time back then, which justifies at least the idea of some kind of a deal in the first place, what some people would say. And with the deal still up in the air now, even as we're having this conversation, I think that that's a debate we'll probably be hearing a lot more about in the weeks to come.
I have a feeling you are right. Thanks for the details, Brett.
Of course.
Now, the Knesset has just greenlit a new bill designed to counter incitements for terror on the internet. If passed, this law would give the government extraordinary new powers to block content from social media pages like Twitter and Facebook, as well as private blogs and news websites, such as this one, at its complete discretion with no trial or hearing. The bill has just cleared the Law, Constitution, and Justice Committee, meaning it'll head to the Knesset for a full vote sometime in the coming days or weeks. The text is the work of Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan and Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked, and according to them, the idea here is to prevent incitement to terror and violence in the digital age, where social media is typically the single most used platform of the era. This was indeed proven to be the case almost 2 years ago when a terror wave of stabbing incidents by Palestinian terrorists engulfed the nation. Social media and Facebook was widely seen as the primary conduit of terror there. Critics, however, have pointed out that this bill does far more than target incitements of violence, and for them it seems to target virtually every form of disagreement with the government, right down to rallying against army enlistment, paying your taxes, or even just public dissidents. Dr. Tehila Schwartz-Altshuler of Israel's Democracy Institute calls the proposal, quote, one of the most severe infringements of freedom of expression passed by the current Knesset, end quote. For her, the bill amounts to censorship and bypasses due process completely by allowing the government to block content without any kind of trial or counter-argument from the person who posted it. In its current version, the law would grant the Justice Ministry the power to take down content it deems harmful to national security, without the need to provide reasoning. Now, the internet is undoubtedly one of the most complex frontiers of the digital age, so needless to say, nations trying to govern what can and cannot be posted to the World Wide Web certainly have their work cut out for them. More on the subject of health, whether you improve it, maintain it, or take it completely for granted, it all ends pretty much in the same way. And that's why a life insurance policy is often one of the best defenses we can set up to protect our loved ones in the event of the worst. But policies are often inflexible, expensive, and you don't even always get the payout. Well, hopefully, with List settlements, that's all about to change. Joining me now with the details are Yaakov Golden and the founder and CEO of List. Thank you so much for coming in, Yaakov.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so my first question, tell us about List. What is this platform?
So a few years ago, my partner's grandmother, Nancy, sold her life insurance policy to an investor when she was 82 years old and had been paying 40 years of premiums.
Wow.
She sold it because the premiums had become too expensive to maintain. So she actually gave up a $1 million policy for just under $100,000.
So she didn't really get her money's worth there.
Not only did she not get her money's worth, it was also a really poor experience. She had no idea what the value on her policy was, and it was a very non-transparent experience.
So then what does List do?
So List is giving Nancy and many other seniors with this situation a much better solution for their really valuable asset that they've been maintaining for many years by changing the format to a premium financing format where they no longer need to surrender their policy. They from now just don't need to pay premiums, and for that they give only a portion of their policy away to investors.
So how does that work? It turns a life insurance policy into like a liquid asset that you can monetize and sell?
Exactly. Basically, List Settlements is a marketplace, an exchange, where investors could tap into this new investment opportunity for them by investing in small portions in many policies. And for that, they don't need domain expertise, where today only very few investors have that expertise.
So this sounds like it's good for the individual policyholder. It sounds like. How does it work for the the insurance agent or the seller?
So mostly the seller is similar to today.
Yes.
Now looking at the investor's side, today the investors are a very few group of investors who have very deep pockets and expertise in this domains. And they're getting excellent returns in this investment. But the medium-sized investors like family offices or hedge funds have limited access to this kind of investment. And now with our List platform, they have much more access to it.
Exactly. All right, so when and where will this be available?
So hopefully within a few months, we're starting a POC. We're actually also working as part of the accelerator of Barclays, powered by Techstars right now, which is very exciting. And through them and through a few other strategic partnerships, we hope to do a POC, and after that, go live.
All right, Yaakov Golden from List, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
All right, now imagine if Uber started delivering tefillin, or Jewish phylacteries, right to your door. Well, this latest find on the App Store might be the closest thing. A Brooklyn Chabadnik is now raising eyebrows at Chabad's headquarters with his new tefillin connection app called Wrap. Tefillin consists of two small boxes with Hebrew scriptures inside, connected to leather straps. One adorns the head, and another wraps up an arm. In Judaism, the act of putting on tefillin and saying the related prayers is a big mitzvah. Well, now, you won't even need to go out and buy a set. You'll just need the Wrap app. A 39-year-old Brooklyn Chabad businessman, Shimon, created the smartphone app in order to connect those who want tefillin with those who have tefillin. With a few taps in the app, you're connected with another user within a 20-mile radius who you can then meet up with, and it's all free. Within the first month, over 4,500 users and counting signed on, and that's without an official launch or marketing campaign, so it must be a popular concept. Now, while putting on tefillin is considered to be a daily commandment for Jewish men, many non-Orthodox women also take part. Thankfully, they're covered too. The app has no policy on women who want to put tefillin on, saying it's up to each individual tefillin provider. So for those of you who don't know or haven't seen his face plastered all over your social media accounts, the Scottish actor Gerard Butler touched down in Tel Aviv last week, and he has the city going nuts. Of course, ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has more.
Not only do I have all the details, but some of my close friends were actually partying with him at the Gazebo Beach Club in Herzliya. And for those of you who don't know, that is a gorgeous city 10 minutes outside of Tel Aviv. The actor landed in Israel just last Thursday night and has since been the talk of the town, turning heads all over the city, being asked constantly for a quick selfie. A friend of mine actually asked, and he said no. I'm assuming too many fangirls were there. And after all, who can't recognize that face walking down the street of Tel Aviv? I know I would.
All right, so what exactly is Butler doing here, though, other than literally turning heads, as you said, at the Tel Aviv beaches?
Okay, so according to reports, Butler has been spending a lot of time with his close friend, Israeli director Ariel Vroman, who he's known since 2000 when the actor appeared in the director's short film Jewel of the Sahara. They've since remained super close, visiting each other frequently. Back in January, actually, their girlfriends rang in the New Year together back in Mexico.
All right, so, I mean, that sounds amazing. You know, but again, other than Vroman, who is his personal friend, you know, Butler has been seen on many other Israeli celebrities' social media accounts. And I think I even saw a video of him with master mentalist Lior Sushar.
Yep, that is right. Other than the list of famous celebrities that Butler has taken selfies with and hung out with, he also casually ran into Israeli mentalist Lior Sushar, who put him in less than a relaxed state of mind. Sushar showed him his ways and was apparently able to read the actor's minds pretty easily. Sushar even asked him later, "How did I do it?" You know, just kind of teasing him, and Butler responded, "Because I'm very easy to read." So it's safe to say that other than the stunning beaches, gorgeous models, getting his mind read by Lior Sushar, Gerard Butler definitely had his fair share of an outstanding Israeli summer.
All right, so yes, that's probably to say the least. You know, I heard he's gone out to some of the coolest bars and clubs here in the city, and again, having a good time in Tel Aviv isn't exactly the hardest thing to accomplish. I'm sure you actually, you know, wish you had a chance to meet him, but maybe next time?
I hope so.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. Well, it's finally here. Showtime has just premiered the new comedy series, Who is America?, from Jewish comedian Sacha Baron Cohen. The Oscar-nominated funny man is the mind behind Borat, Bruno, and The Ali G Show, which features Cohen dressing up incognito to expose social hypocrisies. Well, this time he's setting his sights on modern-day America, and the first episode introduces audiences to his latest unforgettable alter ego, Colonel Eran Morad, a self-proclaimed Israeli anti-terror expert, complete with Israeli accent and all. In his new show, Cohen is up to his usual bag of tricks. Among other alter egos, the guise of Eran Morad is almost frighteningly authentic, right down to the prosthetic makeup, accent, Hebrew expressions, gestures, and of course his swanky walk. As seen in episode 1 of the new series, Eran Morad is on a mission to convince American gun lobbyists, NRA members, and even United States congressmen to arm school children with guns. The Israeli colonel claims that in his home country, children as young as 4 are regularly trained with firearms in a program called Kindergardians, a concept that his interviewees immediately take to. The catch here, of course, is that there obviously is no Eran Morad, and no such program like that exists in Israel. The entire gag is a clever ruse designed to expose American leaders into making some seriously troubling admissions concerning their stance on firearms. In the first episode, current and former congressmen and senators, including Trent Lott, Dana Rohrabacher, Joe Wilson, and Joe Walsh, openly say on camera that they advocate training infants with pistols, rifles, and a rudimentary knowledge of mortars. South Carolina Representative Joe Wilson defends the idea by saying that the Second Amendment does not include an age limit. But Cohen's unwitting participants are certainly not laughing. Some actually leapt to damage control mode before the show even aired, including former United States vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin, whose episode has yet to premiere. Former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh said he was duped into the interview on the promise of a pro-Israel award. Following the premiere of Who is America, Walsh says he does not believe we should train and arm kindergartners. But in last night's episode, Walsh can be seen looking directly into the camera pitching the Kindergardians program and saying, quote, "In less than a month, a first grader can become a first grenader," end quote. The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. I love getting to know people. Forming connections is an important part of life, so today's word is lechaber, or to connect. Now, obviously, lechaber is about more than just connecting with friends. I don't know about you, but I used to love to lechaber, or connect the dots, when I was a kid. Then there's also lechaber for and hachibur tzorfati, or the French connection. One chibur or connection I don't miss, dial-up. I can still hear the rash chibur or connection noises in my nightmares. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be warm with clear skies and a low of 78 or 26 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect some more partly cloudy skies and warm weather with a high of 87 or 31 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.64 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.